This free stream of the BBC is available to you from Vermont Public Radio, and you can support us now at vpr.org. And thanks.
Help. It is often the questions of speed and quantity which have become sources of frustration. It isn't about 5, 10 or 15 tanks, said the country's leader in his overnight address. Discussions must end with decisions on strengthening our defence against terrorists, he added. Volodymyr Zelensky has even given a precise quote, saying 300 tanks are needed for his troops to win.
The European Court of Human Rights is set to announce whether it will hear a Dutch case against Russia over the downing of a Malaysia Airlines flight in 2014. Almost 300 people died when flight MH17 was shot down by a Russian-made missile fired by Moscow-backed Ukrainian separatists.
This free stream of the BBC is available to you from Vermont Public Radio, and you can support us now at vpr.org. And thanks.
Campaign amounts to a continuing violation of the relatives' human rights. The case hinges on whether or not Russia had effective control over the area of Ukraine where the alleged atrocities were committed. At this stage, the court will only rule on whether the criteria has been met for it to deal with this application, which incorporates allegations made by Kyiv. Moscow has been...
This free stream of the BBC is available to you from Vermont Public Radio, and you can support us now at vpr.org. And thanks.
Full number of COVID-related deaths in China's rural regions as the virus spreads from the big cities into more remote areas. People working in the funeral industry said they've been receiving 3 times as many orders compared with normal times. North Korea is reported to have ordered a 5-day lockdown in the capital Pyongyang because of what it calls a respiratory illness. From Seoul, this report from Jean Mackenzie.
North Korea only declared its first outbreak of coronavirus in May last year, and within a few months it claimed to have eradicated it. Today's lockdown order, which has been seen by the North Korean monitoring service NK News, refers not to COVID, but to rising cases of respiratory illnesses. Today's notice bans residents from leaving their homes until Sunday night. We don't know how many people have caught or died of COVID in North Korea, partly because the authorities themselves don't know. They haven't developed a mass testing system.
Jean Mackenzie. World News from the BBC. Police in Pakistan have arrested a senior opposition leader on charges of sedition for allegedly inciting violence against the Election Commission. Fawad Chaudhry, from the party of the former Prime Minister Imran Khan, was taken into custody from his home in Lahore. Mr. Chaudhry said his arrest was illegal and defended.
This free stream of the BBC is available to you from Vermont Public Radio, and you can support us now at vpr.org. And thanks.
Against the US dollar today, as a government price cap is being lifted. Pakistan has kept the rupee artificially high, which has led to a growth in the black market. Here's Caroline Davis.
As the difference between the bank's rate and the black market rate has got bigger.
This free stream of the BBC is available to you from Vermont Public Radio, and you can support us now at vpr.org. And thanks.
Available, so companies have struggled to pay for imports they need. That policy is about to change. The government wants more dollars in the market, and the official exchange companies have said that they will stop keeping the rates so high. The worry now is that allowing the Pakistani rupee to depreciate could lead to other issues, including price rises at a time when inflation in Pakistan is already over 20%.
Coast Guards from Japan and South Korea are searching for crew missing from a cargo ship that capsized between the two countries. At least 13 people have been rescued out of the 22 on board. The vessel sank in fierce winds in the early hours of Wednesday. At the Australian Open tennis tournament, Poland's Magda Linette has beaten the former world number 1, Karolina Pliskova, to go through to the semi-final. Linette, who's ranked only 45th, called it a dream come true.
This free stream of the BBC is available to you from Vermont Public Radio, and you can support us now at vpr.org. And thanks.
You're listening to the newsroom from the BBC World Service with me, Alex Ritson. So, after months of prevarication, Germany looks set, finally, to send its much-vaunted Leopard 2 main battle tank to Ukraine. It's a move that follows days, weeks, of delicate negotiations between the authorities in Washington and Berlin, with the Americans now expected to agree to send Ukraine 30 of their Abrams tanks too.
This free stream of the BBC is available to you from Vermont Public Radio, and you can support us now at vpr.org. And thanks.
To send armour to the war. The image.
This free stream of the BBC is available to you from Vermont Public Radio, and you can support us now at vpr.org. And thanks.
Been welcomed by some in Berlin. Alexander Müller is defence spokesman in the Bundestag for one of Olaf Scholz's coalition partners, the Free Democrats.
Our Chancellor was quite reluctant, hesitating, but I'm glad that he finally changed his mind. I don't think he was dodging anybody. He needed his time to be persuaded. I think it was his international partners, the Polish, the Finnish, the Dutch, the Spanish, all considered delivering Leopards. It was his own coalition partners like us, Free Democrats, who were urging since months.
This free stream of the BBC is available to you from Vermont Public Radio, and you can support us now at vpr.org. And thanks.
Agree of Leopard 2.
I heard more on the agonising that lies behind the German decision from our correspondent in Berlin, Damien McGuinness.
I think there has been a lot of criticism of Chancellor Scholz now for months over this question. He's been accused of being hesitant, of being unclear, intransparent. A lot of people have said, well, we don't really know what he thinks or what he's doing on this question. He's just repeated certain mantras. Now it looks like he did have a plan after all, possibly. The mantra he's been repeating for months has been Germany should not go it alone.
This free stream of the BBC is available to you from Vermont Public Radio, and you can support us now at vpr.org. And thanks.
There had been quite hefty discussions, even rows, according to some German media reports, between American and German officials over this issue. America saying, no, we're not going to send our battle tanks because of lots of logistical reasons. Now, if the US media reports are true, it could be America has backed down and that Olaf Scholz has managed to get American buy-in in order to not.
This free stream of the BBC is available to you from Vermont Public Radio, and you can support us now at vpr.org. And thanks.
To negotiate an alliance of European countries together with the US to send in battle tanks to Ukraine, which would leave Germany feeling less isolated and also calm some of the fears of voters that either Germany could be a target or that this thing is spiralling out of control and that Germany is doing something rash on its own.
If that is right, why is it so?
This free stream of the BBC is available to you from Vermont Public Radio, and you can support us now at vpr.org. And thanks.
Germans view sending Leopard 2 battle tanks. The country is really split on this. You have a lot of people who, well, the overwhelming support for Ukraine is quite astounding in Germany. You do have the majority of people want weapons for Ukraine. They want quite substantial humanitarian, financial support for Ukraine. But when it comes to battle tanks, you have historical reasons why this is a painful issue or a delicate issue for many Germans. Because if you think of the idea of German-made tanks under the Nazis going in.
This free stream of the BBC is available to you from Vermont Public Radio, and you can support us now at vpr.org. And thanks.
It's something that Germany does not want to repeat. So there are lots of historical ideas of responsibility, which makes this a very uncomfortable and difficult issue for Germans. And I think also there is an awareness that Germany is very near to Ukraine and that if you look at some of the more ferocious Russian media, they're very vocal about saying, Berlin could be a target. And that's something that Germans are aware of. I think when you talk to analysts, they'll say, well, right now Russia is pretty stretched. So it's unlikely, or it's very unlikely, that Russia would target a NATO member. It would seem very unwise. But that doesn't take away the anxieties that I think a lot of people have here, understandably, given Germany's painful 20th century history.
Damien McGuinness. So much for the decision makers in Washington and Berlin. But what?
This free stream of the BBC is available to you from Vermont Public Radio, and you can support us now at vpr.org. And thanks.